Hi everybody, welcome to our session about inspiring stories from engineering leaders. I'm excited to be joined by 4 great engineering leaders here today. And we'll jump right through it. I want you to introduce each one of you. Please introduce yourself. We go by order of sitting. So Eyal, you go first.
So hello everyone. So I'm Eyal Levy. I'm VP Engineering at BigID. BigID is a unicorn startup leading in the data intelligence market. I started with BigID like 3 years ago, and during my entire career I was doing data protection, starting as a data scientist and going through various positions for an engineer, leader, director of a couple of products, and then here I am with BigID leading the engineering. So hello everyone, hello Ori.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Yaron Inger. I'm co-founder and CTO of Lightricks. We're a 9-year-old company building mobile creative content editing and creation tools. Maybe you've heard of our apps. Famous ones are Facetune and Videolip. We have tens of millions of users worldwide. I started as CTO, but actually I was a developer and individual contributor and tech lead for multiple projects and apps in Lightricks. And eventually right now I'm leading 150 researchers and developers.
Hi, I'm Einat Orr. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Treeverese, the company behind the open source project LakeFS. Formerly the VP R&D or CTO of 4 Israeli startup companies, the latest of is SimilarWeb. And by profession, I'm an algorithms developer, and I have a PhD in mathematics from Tel Aviv University.
Hi, my name is Amir Hozez. I'm currently leading the engineering team at IntSights. IntSights was recently acquired by Rapid7. I joined IntSights a little bit more than 5 years ago as VP of engineering, but essentially I was a team leader to like 4 developers. And along these amazing 5 years, it was one real serious roller coaster. Currently I'm leading a little bit over 60 developers. I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. Maybe I should have started and say that I'm the co-founder and CEO of LinearB. I didn't say it at the beginning. So I want to start by, everybody here is now a leader in this space. And hear a little about your journeys, like how you became an engineering leader. And Einat, I want to start with you. You had, I think, a unique story of, the phases you went through, which I think is, again, unique, and also now you're a CEO of a company, right? So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I started, I didn't really know what I wanted to learn. So I started with engineering, and then I realized I love mathematics more. So I completed my engineering degree and continued with mathematics. And I ended up doing a PhD, not because I wanted to be a professor, but just because I enjoyed the research, but I knew I wanted to do something practical. And when I left the university, I was an algorithms developer. And it so happened that I joined a friend that started a startup company, and I started as the chief scientist, and I managed the algorithms team. And then 2008 happened, and the company was in need of a VP R&D, and I was in the habit of telling other people what to do. So, and times were tight, so they decided to promote me, which was great for me because I really enjoyed it, and I ended up managing developers and studying and learning a lot of things that I didn't know by profession earlier. And I realized that I actually like software architecture. I was never a great mid or low level architect for software. I'm a mathematician by profession. But when it came to systems, I had my view of things. And I love looking at R&D organizations as optimization problems, very, very sophisticated optimization problems. So I really found myself within that profession, and I ended up doing it for very many years until almost 2 years ago.
And maybe just add about like what took you like to the next step, like engineering leader that's becoming a CEO, like feeling ready to do that?
I would have to blame my co-founder for that. So Oz, my co-founder, had this beautiful idea of LakeFS, and he pitched it to me, and I immediately said no. And then he took me to a few meetings with potential customers, and people started talking about it, and I love data, and I thought it was a really great way of managing data. And I realized that I could really identify with the customer. So being a CEO suddenly made sense. And I'm really enjoying it. So I was never sorry for taking that decision.
Perfect. Yaron, you actually told me you have a unique way of looking at this journey from like individual contributor, becoming a CTO. You even used the word like grief and like a sorrow, like being, you know, the fact that you need to stop coding. Talk to me about that and the phases.
Yeah, so in Lightricks, I began as an individual contributor. We were 5 co-founders, 4 of us were developing our first app, Facetune, which became really successful. So initially, I was only an individual contributor, and I was mainly responsible for leading the project technically. But as we grew, it became a necessity for someone to lead the development team. So after being a tech lead for a few apps, such as Enlight and Facetune 2, I started managing our infrastructure teams. And it was a very long process of like getting over the fact that I'm no longer an individual contributor, right? And I guess that a lot of individual contributors who are now engineering managers and leaders can relate to what I'm saying, right? Because you're so used to writing code, and writing code is really, really fun. You solve problems, you solve tens of problems every day, right? You compile your code, you run it, something is working. It's so exciting, right? You get back home and super happy about it. And yeah, I solve a lot of problems today. But when you're becoming an engineering manager, it's becoming way more complicated, right? People have problems. You're starting to think how I can grow these people professionally. You need to communicate with many stakeholders, etc. So it's becoming much more complex, and even this feeling of success is becoming a bit unclear, right? Because it's not a problem that you clearly solved and now you have code that's working. You're working at a very long time with someone to grow professionally, or you're trying to solve an organizational problem. And even if you found the correct solution, it takes some time to actually see that it's working. So you need to be much more patient.
So you miss coding? You miss it?
I miss coding, although I do it sometimes. I still think that, even engineering managers, I think that they need to find some time to code because it's really, but the objective is different, right? As an individual contributor, the goal is to deliver critical chunks of code that will improve the product. As an engineering manager, I think that it's still important to code, but not the critical parts of the code, just to get a hang of what your team is dealing with, what are the main problems, right? And then understand how you can help the team increase their performance and become better.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I personally think that being a developer is by far the most satisfying job, and it's just pure fun, to be honest. But I do think that as an engineering leader, there are some some pleasures that are only saved for you. For instance, if you have a team member that you foster and you want him to evolve, and you see how he or her flourish through a process that you've created, I think it is as satisfying as writing a really scalable, amazing system or platform. And I think these little pleasures there aren't many like in this role of of like running engineering teams, but there are some, and these are really amazing. I think they're second to none. Like seeing your team or different people flourish, I think this is amazing, really.
I agree with that. I mean, if you build the right career path and then you see that working, that's fulfilling as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I had like still situations where does it happen to you when you see your laptop like sitting like there and you think, okay, what should I do? And you say, oh, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna build like a cool project now. It's never, oh, I'm gonna take it and check what's happened with the team and how do we scale. It's always like the first still now. And that's when I see my laptop sit and this is the first thing I wanna do. So definitely can really relate to that. Let's move to I think the next subject that it's probably very interesting to our audience, scaling a team. I think it's a problem that everybody handles and everybody goes about it like in a different way. So I want to hear, the challenges that you had and, let's start with you. You grew, I think, exponentially. I don't know, you started with like...
At BigID, we've grown from like 20 engineers at the end of 2018 to now at around 150 engineers, in many geographies, Israel, Eastern Europe, in the US. And we got the funding. We had, still have, big projects that we want to execute on. And, the two challenges was deciding where to hire those engineers, then bring them on board, but also training them. So finding the talents, our core team is here in Tel Aviv. So of course, for all the core stuff, we decided, and that's what I believe in, it's not ideal to break things that are tightly coupled into multiple geographies. It's usually the best thing is to keep things close. And if you have, a separate initiative, separate products, then that's great, put them offshore, but let's not create dependencies between sites. This was our goal. So for the core team, we did focus on Tel Aviv, and we did see that, the friend bringing friend program, that what worked best for us. And I think like 70% of the employees that we onboarded here in Israel were with that referral program. It worked best for us.
Didn't you change the architecture to allow more flexibility? Try and smaller.
We had to change our CI because it was for one service very naive. So we had to break it into multiple services. We had to make sure that each Scrum is, not dependent on the other Scrum, so that they can run just as a very small startup, together for one mission. So it was very, very important for us because we wanted to keep kind of the DNA startup for each of the Scrums. The remote teams were just dealing with different products. So there was less dependencies and each team could just pursue the goal and continue. And then, we had all these engineers. The onboarding piece was really important. So we made sure that there is a dev buddy for each engineer that is starting. Some of the engineers started during the COVID timeframe. So we had to make sure that, they at least come to the office, once a week to meet this dev buddy. So they have like personal relationship with this person. So we did that. And we also kind of formalized the way we train those engineers, and we kind of added the engineering onboarding or training processes to what we call the BigID University. So the courses that every engineer gets once he joins is just going through an online training. It doesn't substitute face-to-face training, but it gives him a nice start because he can go to these online, very professional videos and kind of get the official training. So we had that. And yes, now we are at around 150. We continue to hire. So lots of positions are open. And yeah.
He's trying to hire now. That's like, we're all going to do that, right?
But you also told me something very interesting that caught my attention, that somebody gave you the advice to always hire, like to guess what's the next level that you need.
I think this is kind of the best tip that I received from one of our board members, who basically told me, I think it was during the very first call that I had with him when I joined BigID, and he basically said, hire now for the key roles that you need, like for the director roles, and don't wait until you absolutely need it. Because now, it's still small, you have the time to hire them and to get them trained, and don't wait that it will be like too late. And that's what we did. So in the very beginning, we hired those leaders that we know that has the experience, has directors that can grow with the team. And they were okay and fine with, starting as like the team leads, like very hands-on, because they wanted to do this training, to learn everyone. But we knew that when the time comes and we have the large teams, they will be able to operate and execute on that. And I think that this is really important when you kind of expect that something like that is going to happen, like be more proactive and not reactive to these events, and hire in advance if budget allows that. And I think this is what really helped us to be prepared for that. So, yeah.
They say the best time to fix your leaky roof is during the summer.
True. Yeah. Definitely that.
I really like what you said about the teams being self-sufficient. I think this is one of the things that, one of the major changes that we've went through is the entire Agilic process with Scrum and everything, starting from a small startup, working like whatever, and going, through this maturity process of adopting Agile and Scrum, etc. And I think what really made the most significant change for our teams was the self-sufficiency and the reduction of interfaces. Some people think, I think that interfaces are good. You need to push the teams to interact more. I think interfaces have this inherent issue and overhead with them. We all need the interface, but the more what we learned is that the more your teams are self-sufficient, the better they will operate.
So we still have what we call the guilds that are crossing those scrums.
Those two,
And this is where they meet and share knowledge. And as you said, that's not slowing us down, because this is where they kind of share and learn from each.
It's basically what Einat said about the optimization problem, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to build your org structure, but you want every team to be as independent as possible, right? With minimal interfaces.
Yeah.
And I think that this is also something that changes over time, right? It made sense. I mean, you said that initially it was like, a big mess or chaos or whatever, but it made sense when you were like 5 or 10 people, right? Because it's like a click and it makes sense. You have an exponential number of connections, but the number of people is still small. But once you grow, you need these islands that can communicate together well.
I like the graph theory, but
I also appreciate the advice that your board member gave you. I think the building or having the infrastructure from a managerial perspective to grow an organization can really help you grow very quickly, because you have managers that are hiring for themselves. And if it's built well and they don't have an overlap or a large overlap in talent, then the organization can really grow pretty quickly without losing efficiency as much as possible, and without losing its culture, which is extremely important.
Yeah, because
you have time to influence exactly.
Yeah.
But that's super interesting because, I think culture plays such an important role, right? Like you had an interesting comment. We'll get back to it in a second around culture, but I always have this debate where should I promote people from within? Because you said, hey, we went and hired the people that we will need in the future. And it's always this debate, should we promote people from within, to grow into those roles, or go and search for them outside? So, and you said, I think you described a similar what's your preference like in those type of situations?
So yes, we always have this dilemma, but I think that the right answer is really combine the two things, because when you promote someone from within, you need someone to mentor him, right? And when the organization is very small, in some cases, you don't have enough mentors to do that.
Yeah,
so you need to
mentor
combine,
energy, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to combine it. We are going to start a mentorship program internally, because now we are big enough to allow that. But all in all, I think that some of our managers, maybe even most of them, were actually promoted from within. But some of the directors, half of them were promoted because they were ready for that. But the others we had to bring from outside, because I also think that bringing, fresh view and adding more adding more knowledge from the outside is basically extending the DNA of a company. And I think that this is very important, because otherwise, people are locked with what they designed at the very beginning. And once you scale, you have to do that. So when we decided to move or add the kind of the platform of the cloud for BigID, we decided that the right move is to also bring a leader with that experience. And once we onboarded him, we immediately saw the change, right? He came with the experience, the day-to-day experience of managing a product that is SaaS, and we saw the influence of that. And I think he's also training those leaders below him, and now they can have this knowledge as well. So it's always you need to have both, right? It's not one this or the other.
Yeah, I highly agree with that. I mean, we're actually, our hiring strategy from the get-go was a bit different than most of the high-tech companies that I know of in Israel, because we're based in Jerusalem. So our strategy was like the army. We hire really talented people, but most of them are juniors, right? So we're based in the Hebrew U campus, so it was really easy for us to capture really great junior talent. And many of these people are now, VPs in the company, managing engineering teams, etc. It took them like 5-6 years to grow, but yeah, they understand the culture like us, the founders, right? So it's highly valuable. On the other end, as the company grew, I agree we had to bring external talent, especially in the director or VP level, etc. Because I actually felt that I need this external input. I want people telling me, okay, Lightricks is doing things this way, but I know another way to do it. It can be, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, better. It can be different, and we can learn from each other, and then, derive the best solution to how we're going to tackle things. So adding, external culture is making things more interesting, and I think better and more robust.
Now I want to talk about products and like the things that we're building, and this is where I like to hear like the cool war stories about like the product that breaks in the right before you need like the big demo or. So I think we have, I've heard some of this floating around, but yeah, I want to start with you, not necessarily about like the broken product, but maybe describe a little bit, because I think you grew lately from, which is something that happens by the way with a lot of SaaS companies, right? From a single product to a platform that now covers like a lot. How do you see this transition from like one product line to all of a sudden a platform that needs to support like?
Yeah. So as we have grown as a product, we basically realized that we can leverage all the components that we have. We are already connecting to like close to 100 different data sources, and our product is all about data. And we have many skills or technologies that optimize how we search in data, how we run the NLPs on it. So we realized that we can give to our customers more than just privacy as an example. So basically we shifted to a platform, and many companies are saying platform, but for us platform meant that we have all of our APIs available to outside, but also a very easy and smooth way for teams, not just within BigID, but also outside, to basically build applications. So application is not new, but bringing applications to the data world is new. So basically, at this point, we are giving to our customers a more holistic approach, so that they don't necessarily, need to scan their data multiple times for each of the point products. That basically do the scan once with BigID, and then they can use the apps that BigID is bringing, which is not just privacy, it's security today, it's data perspective, cataloging. So it's really large set of apps. And we have customers today that are writing their own apps to extend the system with what they specifically need. And also vendors outside that wants to integrate with BigID, so they write their own apps. So it basically allowed us to scale as a product. It also allowed the engineering teams to scale, because now I can add another team somewhere in the globe, just give them the SDK, tell them this is the idea, this is what we want, and then they can inject kind of a new app into BigID with the new UI, and you have a new feature, a new capability, and even a new application, new product within the software. And it worked very well for us. We did manage to upsell a couple of our customers to use that. Right now, we have over 50 apps that were written. We have added a community around that, a marketplace where people can put their apps and buy the apps through it. So basically, it really helped us to grow and start thinking beyond what we did and continue expanding and build on top of that. And it's working very well for us.
Cool. And Einat, you told me about there's this concept of product market fit. We all heard about it, right? I always say, I don't know if it's like a binary thing or it's a, sometimes it slips. I feel that we have it, but now we lost it. So, but you told me an interesting story when you arrived to, I think it was SimilarWeb.
Nice.
And you arrived right at the moment where they found their product market fit. And now I think you need to start deploying new features and everything breaks. I think this is how he described it. And you said something that really was really interesting. You said, if you got to product market fit and everything works perfect, something is wrong. Like you gotta, so
right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so if you look under the hood, when a company gets to product market fit and it's all beautiful and shiny, someone wasted tons of time, right? And usually, at least 10 years ago, now we all have too much money, but once upon a time where it was actually hard to raise money, then you had to be really very efficient. So you solved only the problems you had to solve until you got to product market fit and you had to prove you actually have a product and you have a company. And at that point, you probably neglected quite a lot of things. And if you haven't, then you wasted time and money you shouldn't have wasted. So when I joined SimilarWeb, there was an amazing product market fit. And a lot of customers were joining, and the problems with the scale started. And it wasn't with the scale of the data, because they realized very early, before I joined, it was a product that is a data product. And then the architecture from a data perspective was Hadoop, and really the right choices, very scalable, made sense. But anything related to serving to users and UI, not there, because they never had to support the scale and they neglected that, and for a good reason. So I actually liked what I saw from it. It made sense that the company would be at that position. And also the R&D itself, right? The structure of the R&D, the teams, the support for production. There was one person getting alerts to their email. That was the DevOps of SimilarWeb.
Pre-PagerDuty.
End of 2014, yes. An amazing person, really. He could have handled that alone until he couldn't anymore, and there was no system to back anything up, and we had to fix all that. And there was a very good engineering team, so they knew what makes sense, they knew what needed to be done, and we had to go through this phase of saying, okay, there will not be too many new features for a certain amount of time, because we have to create the infrastructure for customers to like the product because it's stable.
Which is something that every CEO likes to hear.
Yes, of course. So actually at this point, the company was already suffering from quality issues and production issues. So definitely both product and the CEO were willing to listen and understand that there's an investment that had to be done. And we talked earlier about the culture of, right, explaining and bringing and showing the value and promising things and then actually delivering them. So saying, if we do this in a month, then that would not happen anymore. And then we did it, and it didn't happen anymore, so we were trusted to do the next thing in investing in infrastructure. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting journey, and I was really lucky to inherit such a talented team that really knew the work.
You also told me something that it was almost like flying blind until that point, and you had to add like a lot of visibility, metrics.
Yeah. So no one else had access to his email. So
to this guy.
Yeah, so we really didn't know anything about, nothing. There was no monitoring, but also there is no tracking of the work itself. What was done, what wasn't done. The bugs in Jira weren't prioritized. Historical stuff were running around. No one knew what's important, what's not important, what relates to what. And we actually had to build this internal kind of R&D BI thing that would provide visibility both to production and to quality and to efficiency of processes. And we did all that to be able to work better. It took us time. We started with production, obviously. We had the slogan, production first, for a year until we stabilized everything. And then we moved to other processes. And visibility is extremely important. You have to see what you have in order to decide what to do, right? And if you don't have the visibility, you probably won't take the right decisions.
Cool. I think, maybe the last round of questions that I would like to do is around failures that we had as managers. And feel free to choose something that is almost a failure if you don't feel comfortable to go describe one of your failures, but and it's also okay to pass, but I'm going to start to give an example. One of my major failures, I think I did it even more than once, but when I scaled the team, I had the situations where I needed to do exactly like you said, Eyal, we had to grow the team, and there's one case that I really remember of a great individual contributor that was also really helping the others, reviewing code, designing everything. And I said, hey, you should be a team leader. And at the first meeting that I sat with the person, he said, no, I don't want. I want to stay here and stay as an individual, as an IC, and continue to do the job. And I said, I was locked in, with all of my power. I said, no, you're going to be great at it. And I kind of forced my hopes and my expectation on that person. And after 2 or 3 months, he was burned out. And I lost a great individual contributor. And I think this is where I learned my first lesson is we talked about us being developers first and then managers. When you're a developer, everything is deterministic. You put 2 parameters into a function, you will always return the same result. People are different, you put the 2 parameters and everybody reacts differently. So that was my first lesson as a manager and one of my big failures. So yeah. Einat, when I spoke to you about it, you said, pick any, I had tons of
Give me a subject.
Give me just a subject. So pick your...
Okay, so I'll go with something related to yours, but definitely I think I've made a lot of mistakes. And I think it's important to notice that you make mistakes and learn from them, otherwise it's really a waste. And to our conversation earlier about growing teams, and you guys said you want to promote from the inside, but also bring in talent. So one of my very painful failures was with bringing in talent, because when you bring in someone who is a manager and he didn't grow within the company and its culture, then you might make a really big mistake. Not necessarily from a professional perspective, although that is also an option, but also from a cultural perspective. And then there is this psychology of you really not wanting to admit you made a mistake with the hire, right? Because you feel committed to the person that you have just hired. And you also don't consider too seriously the criticism that the colleagues have, because right, you expect the team to storm a little because a new person came into the team. So you're saying, no, what they're saying is just part of the storming, and you want to help that person succeed. You even tell your other members of your team you have to help that person, and it really takes a very, very long time before you are willing to realize that you made a mistake in hiring. And during all that time, a lot of people are suffering. The organization is suffering, and yeah, when you realize that, it's also very hard to fix.
Was it mostly about getting the trust of the team with the new leader?
Culture. That person just wasn't a cultural fit. For obvious reasons, I won't give too much details, but just wasn't a cultural fit. And it's really destructive to an organization, having a manager in a senior position that doesn't behave in a way that is consistent with the culture. And it's harder to, at least for me, it was harder to see than I expected. And it took me over a year, and that is way too long. So yeah, that was a painful one. I can continue.
Let's see if they're more perfect. No, but I think like it's really interesting because like the similarities that I see, like you really want something to succeed, and in some way as a manager you stop. You stop listening. Like you say, I'm going to go with my instinct. I'm still going to give it a chance, and then there's this moment where you say, wait, like everybody, it's like hurting everybody, and it's hard like to identify that moment. There's nobody comes and okay, now is the moment to re-listen to the people that are saying, hey, it doesn't work.
Yeah. But it's also this instinct that we have, that we're so strong-minded, is also very positive, right? When you lead in a direction and you're strong-minded, that makes other people trust you and want to follow you.
Yes.
But then it backfires in situations where the direction you're taking is not necessarily right. So,
there's this saying of strong opinions loosely held. I constantly tell it to my people. It means that you need to have these strong opinions, right, built on data and experience. But if someone says like something that maybe can change your perspective, you shouldn't strongly hold your position, right? You need to look at the other direction and say, hey, maybe he's right? Maybe something in my current perspective is wrong. Maybe I need to change my perspective a bit. And it's really important. I mean, there's this research that Google did about successful teams, right? And one of the most prominent things there is psychological safety and the ability of people to say what they think and like feel that they're heard as well. So,
but I have to tell you that the situation psychologically is not that simple, because I think people get very quickly what you don't want to hear, and they just won't tell you. Not because the culture is wrong or because it's so, it's so in the details of human interaction. You just don't seem to be happy with that response. You won't hear it. So really what I learned over the years is to make sure that I hear the things I don't want to hear. Like, tell me something I don't want to hear. You really have to ask the question, right? Like,
good question.
Yeah. Just tell me. Because otherwise you don't hear those things.
I think it requires a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Just need trust. I can share with a failure of mine. I think my failure revolves around not letting go at the right time. I think that as you scale an organization, there is this point in time you need to understand that you need to stop managing some of the things and just step aside and become some sort of a cheerleader for your team. Cheer for them, let them do the work. It will be done just fine, okay? Watch from the side, everything will work. And your presence is actually, I won't say destructive, but it interrupts. Okay,
Yeah.
so you just need you really need to step aside someone and just let them work. And I didn't step aside like in time, and this manager that I was actually stepping on his toes, he told me, "Dude, what's up? Like, don't you trust me? Why are you still doing this and that stuff?" And I was like, "Oh my God, no! I really trust you, but I just didn't realize in time that I needed to to delegate and to just step aside and to cheer for them and to tell them, hey, you guys rock, you're the best, keep doing that and that." It was a mistake. I'm glad that like his reaction to me made me understand it. Okay, I need to let go and step aside and let them work. It was a mistake.
It's really interesting because the pattern and it's something that I really see that I made those mistakes. I keep doing them. Sometimes if you're even, because it relates to what you said, people won't tell you what you don't want to hear. And if you're there in the room when they're talking, they will feel your presence and they will change their behavior. So sometimes like the best thing is just walk away and let people do the work.
Microphones so they can no, not really. But yeah, I think you need to understand when your presence is doing damage and just don't be there.
Yeah, super interesting. Anything else you guys want to share? You don't have to.
I think I really, I relate to all of the mistakes. I think it's, everyone did it, right? I think one thing that's mistake that I did in the beginning is, we started as 5 guys and then, grew to 20, 30 engineers, and only 2 years ago we started doubling our headcount every year. So initially, when you're in a small team, everyone knows what they're doing, even if you have managers, right? They know the goals of the company, everyone knows what others are working on, and you don't, even if you manage other managers, you don't need a lot of communication about what needs to be done because everyone knows the job, right? And I didn't figure out early on that I need to set clear expectations from my managers and tell them exactly what I want them to do. And people actually want to succeed, right? They want to succeed in their role and they want to, satisfy their manager, right? It's like a child and a parent. But not setting these expectations basically told them, hey, I don't know what you need to do in order to be great, right? I did work on growing them professionally, trying to make them better managers, but not setting clear expectations did not set them the boundaries to understand where they also fail. So they mostly got this positive feedback, but it was not precise enough.
So I would say add measurable. This is what most team leads are not kind of doing. You need to give a very clear goal which you can measure and put the measure or the expectation in the goal so that at least when you come and review that, you can explain or the engineering itself, he can know what was the expectation, whether it was good enough, whether it was close to the goal. And some people, or leaders tend to leave it open, do this, but do not say what is good, what is the success criteria. And I think this is kind of important and can make this change.
Although I may say it's tricky, many things are measurable. Some things, because we're dealing with humans and not software, is a bit tricky and hard to measure. So we also need to be aware of Goodhart's law, right? Yeah. We don't want people to over-optimize to the metrics. So it needs to be there, but it also needs to be a bit vague. So you won't be able to hack the system, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for sharing your journey, how you scale your team, your products, and also your failures, because I think it shows a great leadership. And we talked about psychological safety. I think it's super important. It will inspire your people to understand that we're all human and we make mistakes. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join this panel. Thank you very much.